This is the Chefpreneur Podcast, where we inspire professional cooks to take on greater risk to build a personal chef business for themselves. Now, here's your host, Andres Hinojosa.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Chefpreneur Podcast. I am your host, Andres Hinojosa. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Again, I just want to always thank you guys for tuning into this podcast. It really means a lot. We get so many emails and so many comments regarding the podcast, and honestly, it brings me so much joy just knowing that you guys are getting something valuable out of it, and we hope that you are. We're here to always try to bring you inspiration on doing something for your own good, as well as being your own boss, starting a personal chef business, being a chefpreneur, and whatever that means to you, right? Whatever success means to you. So we're just here for you. We just want to thank you again for tuning in and supporting this podcast. Now, I'm really excited about today's episode. One of the things that I've realized is I get excited really easily about certain things that I'm going to bring on the podcast and share with you guys. And so one of the biggest things that I do is I actually take a lot of notes and write down a lot of things that come through my head. And honestly, when I just do these podcasts, I don't have any scripts. I just speak from the heart. But you know what? I really feel like today's podcast, I'm just really excited to share this with you because it deals with mindset. And it's one of those things that no matter how many how-tos you have in life, no matter how many people can teach you how to do certain things, without the proper mindset, honestly, it's all a waste of time. And so I'm really excited to bring in the topic for today. However, before we get into that, I wanted to actually take a question. I saw a question come through our Facebook group. Now, if you are not part of our free Facebook group, just go to Facebook, type in the Chefpreneur Movement. You'll find our group. It's free. You'll just basically request to join it. There is a few questions that we ask you just to get feedback from you and see how we can better help and serve you. And so if you head over to Facebook, you type in the Chefpreneur Movement. Again, that's the Chef, Preneur Movement. You guys will find our free Facebook group. And so I pulled a question from there just today, and it's by Melissa Nielsen. And she asked, how do you guys create your menu for a dinner? How many options do you give them for a main course, or is the menu created based on your conversation? Just in the beginning stages of this and not quite sure how to go about it, should I create a menu and let them pick options for their main course, or do we create the menu together? Thanks in advance. That's a great question, Melissa. And honestly, it caught my eye, so I really wanted to just answer that question quick before I hop into today's topic. And basically, the way I do it in my personal chef business and the way that I teach in our masterclass and our mastermind retreats is really, I usually like to break down our services into several options. All right. So in my personal chef business, I have what I call a signature service. And basically all that is, now that's a word that I made up. Of course, you don't have to use that or anything like that, but I made that up. It's basically a type of service where it's family style, and it's a 3-course family style dinner, and they select from a menu that I already have, basically menu options that I already have put together. And what this does for me is it cuts down on the time for me to put together like a custom menu for them, but it also gives them basically, their own choices that they can make to really, pick their own menu of some of the yummy, goods that you offer. Now, I do have another service called my tailored service, and this is a 4-course, and this is a custom menu where I actually go through and I customize the menu with them. I give them my ideas. Maybe it's whatever's in season. Maybe it's, something that they've kind of hinted to me on the phone when I'm doing my sales call. And so basically, Melissa, the best way I see it is you could do both. So basically, you could break down your services. You can have an option where they select from menu selections, which makes it easier for them. Usually that one I don't charge as much because, again, it's saving me time. It's making it easy for them. And usually those menu options that I have on my signature menu are very easy peasy to kind of service, and they're great, good food, but it's just very simple, good, straight, wholesome food. And then a lot of times, again, the tailored is more customized, and sometimes I would say that's a little bit more fancy if you want to use that term. That's when people want the surf and turf, so they want, farm to table, seasonalities, and I'm kind of making sure that I'm looking at what's in the market and kind of basing a menu upon that. So I would say, Melissa, I would break those down into maybe 2 types of services or 3 types of services, and then basically just prescribe to the client what it is that you feel that they need and what would work best for their situation. So again, if it's a bachelorette party, which I'm just using a random example, I might pitch them my signature menu because they're probably going to be hanging out in the pool or the jacuzzi, drinking a little bit, right? Making some cocktails. They're probably not wanting a fancy sit-down dinner. If it's a special anniversary or something like that, that would be more of a tailored service for someone else, right? So basically, you can create two types of services or a few types of services to serve your client and give them the best service that you feel that will fit their needs. So I hope that answered your question, Melissa. I just loved pulling questions off the group, as well as if you have any questions that you want us to discuss here on the podcast, email us at podcast@chefpreneurprogram.com. That's podcast@chefpreneurprogram.com. We'd love to answer any questions that you may have on this podcast. We love taking questions from you guys and just giving you guys that value. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's topic, which I've titled Think, Believe, Do equals Future. I'm going to break down what I mean by all this today in the podcast. One of the things that I've learned, and to be honest, I'm not even for sure if this is a formula that I found because I don't remember finding this. Not to say that I've invented this, but it's a way that I've been able to overcome certain ways on how I think. And I've noticed that when I'm thinking better, my future's better and things start to happen. And I wanted to break down this formula. In fact, I teach this formula. I taught at the last mastermind retreat that we just did here in La Jolla back in November of 2020. And it really just, I believe it set the tone and set the stage for really what the mastermind was all about. And really, it always starts, no matter what level you're at in your business, whether you're thinking about starting a personal chef business, whether you already have one, whether you're just kind of figuring things out, right? You're in this culinary industry. You might be a home cook that's never had any professional experience. You might have just been out of culinary school. You might just be a seasoned chef for 25 years, and you're ready to do something on your own. It really starts with your mindset. Now, I've already done, of course, several podcast episodes regarding your mindset, but this is kind of the formula on how to change your mindset and really how to a formulaic way and approach on how to actually do that. And so I'm going to break it down. And so if you want to consider the equation, it breaks down like this. Okay, what you think, will dictate how you and what you believe. And what you believe will actually dictate what you do. And what you do will actually dictate and equal your future. Okay? Now, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this, all right? Because so many of you guys right now are thinking, man, if I could just think better, if I can think bigger, it really starts with your mindset. And it's funny because you don't really know that you're thinking not very good until you really stop and analyze your thoughts. Now, I know that sounds really weird. People will sometimes say, capture your thoughts. And when I first heard that saying, I didn't really realize what it meant. I was thinking, capture my thoughts. Like, am I thinking something bad? I don't know, am I thinking naughty things or whatever, right? Now, that could be the case with you, but I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about what it is that you're really thinking on a daily basis. Now, it's funny, your health overall can dictate a lot of things, right? The way you eat, exercising, who you're hanging around with. And again, I'll get into all that. But really, realistically, it is a huge part of your success, if not 90% of it, is your thought process. And I hate to say it because a lot of you think, man, it's just if I can figure out how to do it. Now, the how-tos is more of those other guided steps on what to do. Obviously, you're listening to this podcast for a certain reason. You're probably looking right now for information on maybe how to build a personal chef business. And I believe you come to the right place. And we can talk about a lot of the how-tos, and we do on this podcast. But again, if you're not changing your mindset, if you're not able to start to think bigger, think better for yourself, it's going to be really hard to apply those how-tos. All right. Now, I hope I'm making sense. All right. So let's dive into a little bit of the first part of it, which is the think part, right? Which is the most important part. And again, like what we said, what you think is what you'll believe. What you believe will dictate what you do. What you do will dictate your future. Now, you need to understand there's a very, very, very big, I don't want to say a big deal of how you think in the sense of what it is that it takes to start thinking differently, right? Because some people are like, well, it sounds easy. I just think differently. Okay, you can think differently, but it's not going to last. And I'm going to tell you what can really start to get you to think differently. So if you're writing this down or if you're taking notes, I suggest you write this down, right? There's 3 things that dictate how you think. So again, we talked about the formula. What you think is what you believe is what you do will equal your future. I want to go one step just before think and figure out what it is that causes you to think the way you do. And there's 3 components that actually signifies or dictates how you think. Okay? So write this down. Number 1, it's what you see. This is something that I really realized, I grew up part of my life here in San Diego. I was born and raised in San Diego, but then I moved to the Midwest into Iowa, out of all places, when I was basically in middle school, and then I graduated high school from there. And the scenery in Iowa is very different than San Diego. And even if you've been on vacation or you've been anywhere, you've traveled anywhere, there's going to be certain cities that you've been that you see a certain way, right? Like if you see the skyline of Miami in Florida and you see the skyline of Omaha, Nebraska, they're very different and they invoke something different. All right. And so seeing really starts to dictate how you think. In fact, when you see clouds, right? Like think about if you were blind and if you are, I'm not trying to, of course, poke at anybody, and you probably know this more than anybody. But if you're blind, it causes you to not be able to see certain things. And honestly, those things invoke not only emotion, but invoke thoughts, right? So if you're in Seattle and you see this gray cloud all the time, or if you live in the UK and you see this grayness all the time, it's like you're really seeing something and it's causing you to think. It can cause you to think negatively. Maybe you love the rain and you're thinking like, oh man, we're going to get a storm. I love it. I can't wait because I want the storm to come, or we need the storm to come. So again, seeing is a big part of what you start to think. Now, that's number 1. Number 2 is what you hear, okay? Now, you're listening to this podcast right now, and the more that you're feeding these 3 things, which again, I'll get to the third one in a minute, the more that you're exercising, changing what you're seeing, changing what you're hearing, you'll start to think differently automatically. So again, what are you hearing? Right? If you're hearing, for instance, I just recently got a massage. No, I'm not trying to be bougie. I always feel like I'm under intense stress. I'm always trying to bring you guys the best content in the movement and, the business. My personal chef business is growing. We did one of our largest months in August. We're on track to do another probably record-breaking month this month in December of 2020. And to be honest with you, it's like I was doing a massage and the masseuse basically put on some music when I was getting a massage. And it's funny because I'm closing my eyes, but I'm hearing this music and I start to think differently. In fact, I don't start to think very much, which is the whole reason of me relaxing, right? So it starts to dictate my thoughts. I start to feel thoughts of like comfort and peace and tranquility. And what does that do? It allows me to start thinking differently, okay? The third thing is what you read. So seeing is very different than reading, right? Seeing is seeing things around you, seeing the scenery, seeing the sky, seeing, crystal clear waters, but it's really what you read as well. And it's basically that entire environment around you, your atmosphere. What you see, what you hear, what you read will really dictate how you think. So for instance, if you've ever read a book and it's really captivated you, and a lot of people that read books, I read tons of books, business books, leadership books, you name it, I'm really into reading. And what it does is it captivates me. When I read, I start to think differently, right? If I'm listening to the author on Audible and I'm reading the same book, it's like double whammy. It's causing me to mentally make a shift, right? Depending on the book that you're reading, right? So I want to ask you, like, what in your life, where are you at in your life? If you're wherever you live, wherever you are right now in the world, whether you're in the United States or you're, overseas or you're abroad, like your city, like who is it that you're listening to? Who is it that you're seeing? What is it that you're reading? All these things feed into the way you think. And so it's funny because I never really broke it down that way until I really started to realize, like, why would I feel certain types of depression when I would go through parts of San Diego even, right? Sometimes you go through not so nice neighborhoods and you might feel fear. Well, why do you feel fear? Well, because you're seeing maybe graffiti on the wall. You're just feeling that atmosphere. You're hearing certain things. You might be hearing sirens, might be hearing gunshots. It's very different. Then if you were taking a stroll through a park and you're seeing the sunshine, you're seeing the green grass, you're hearing the birds chirping. Notice how that starts to dictate what you think. So you really need to change your atmosphere and where you are and change the things around you in order to truly start to think differently. And whatever you're putting in to your ears, your eyes, and really absorbing with your thoughts by reading is really, again, going to maximize your ability to start thinking differently and thinking better. Okay? And so this is very important because you can really break this formula down. And listen to what I'm going to say, because I know it's true. And I know that you're going to be able to self-reflect and know that I'm telling you the truth right now, right? When you really, really think on something and you really start to think and think and think, and you're like, man, that makes sense, you end up coming to a conclusion where something that you're thinking becomes a belief. So it transfers from a thought until you start to believe something. Notice how right now you can watch the news, you can watch everything about this pandemic, and it can instigate fear. Well, what are you doing? You're constantly seeing, you're constantly hearing, you're reading the newspaper, whatever the case might be, and it starts to dictate your thoughts about what's going on. And your thoughts get dictated so much that you end up believing from those thoughts. Now, what's funny is after you believe, think about this for a minute, what you truly believe starts to actually dictate what you do. For instance, this pandemic, of course, we all know that this pandemic is real. We all know that it's been very devastating for a lot of people. There's been a lot of lives lost, right? And so when you're thinking about these things, again, because of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're reading, you start to believe about the coronavirus is not a good thing, obviously, and it starts to instigate fear. And what does that do? It causes you to start to do things. Again, this is part of the third piece of dictating your future, right? Because your thought process started, it got you to believe something, and now because you believe something, it causes you to act on it, right? Well, I'm going to put my mask on, I'm going to make sure I have all of my hand sanitizers and wearing gloves and so forth and so on. This can be applied to anything in your life. If you're really wanting to be successful, what do you got to do? You got to see people, see things that are successful. Get inspired by that. You got to hear things about success in different areas and how to get there. You got to read about it. It starts to change your thoughts. Your thinking becomes different. And when your thinking becomes different, there comes to a time where you're like, you know what? I can really do this. And that's where it goes from a thought to a belief. And when it hits that belief system so deeply in you, it actually causes you to take action. That's what causes you to get up and start to go for it. You know, when I first started my personal chef business, I remember I really started to do some thinking and thought process around leaving my job. I was making six figures. For those of you who know my story, and maybe you don't, I'm going to give you kind of just a really quick 30-second overview. When I first set out to start my first business, which was a catering and farmers market business, I was making six figures in a hotel as an executive chef. And I started thinking to myself, like, you know what? I'm just getting so over working for someone else. I want to work for me. I want to be my own boss. And so I started, what did I do? I started thinking about it. And then nonstop, I was like, you know what? I got to do more than, I got to start studying. I got to start researching, right? So then the thinking, like just a few of those thoughts turned into me, starting to see certain things. So I start watching videos and I start hearing certain things. And I started listening to certain, entrepreneurs and their stories, and it was inspiring me and it was causing me to make a shift. And I started reading certain business books and really getting inspired. And really what happened was it changed my thought process and say, you know what? I don't think I cannot do this. I actually think I can do this. And I started to believe that. I started believing, man, I can actually do this. I can actually set out on my own and start my own business. And that's exactly what I did. Because eventually I started believing it so much, I was, again, encapsulated with seeing and hearing and reading things and really building up the way I think, and it transferred into what I believe. And when I started really believing it, it's like a teeter-totter. The more that you believe and the more that you meditate on that, the belief system becomes bigger than the non-belief. And that's where you take action. So what did I do? I started gathering up a plan. I started writing a plan. I started doing things. I started to put all these things together. I started to buy equipment. I started to do this. And one day I said, sayonara, I'm out of here. And I left my job. Now, first part of my business was horrible. I mean, I actually, I won't go into that story, but basically, I took action, and 6 months later, I was broke. I ended up moving in with my sister, with me, my wife, and my 3 kids. I moved in with my sister because we couldn't even afford to pay rent. It was really bad. But here's the thing. It's funny that I wouldn't be where I'm at today without changing my thought process 7 years ago when I started my first business. And that's really what I wanted to really share with you guys today, because many of you guys, you want to do things. You start dreaming, okay? And dreaming are thoughts per se, yes, but it's not your mindset. Your mindset's different than a dream. A dream is kind of like, well, that's a wishing well. It's like going to a wishing well, right? And you could dream, and I want you to dream. The problem is with that is that you don't dream enough for it to actually solidify to a thought, because you're not seeing the right things. You're not hearing the right things. You're not reading the right things. So your thought process never changes. You just dream. And then since you don't think properly, you don't believe. And then when you don't believe, of course, you're not going to do anything about it. And if you don't do anything about it, of course, your future's not going to be any different. It's going to be the same old. All right? And here's the thing. I promise you, if you start to make small incremental steps into thinking differently, you'll start to believe certain things. You'll start to believe, instead of believing that it's not possible, instead of saying that, oh, I can't do that, you're going to start to say, you know what, I can do that. And the more that happens, you'll start to actually take action on it. And I'm going to just newsflash, by the way, even when you take action on it, it's not about making mistakes. See, making mistakes is good. It's a good thing, because at least you're doing something and you're learning from it. So even when you go to do things, trust me, you'll make mistakes, but then it goes back to what you think. It goes back to your mindset. It goes back to your mentality. It's like, oh, should I give up? Should I throw in the towel, or should I continue to persevere? And then you're going to see different stories. You're going to hear different stories. You're going to read different stories on how people overcame their failures. And it's going to cause you to believe again that even though you failed, or you feel that you failed, because honestly, I don't believe that you don't fail. The only way you fail is if you give up. It'll cause you to do things again differently. And it will dictate your future. And you will get success if you do not give up. My favorite scripture in the Bible, my favorite quote that I have as my screensaver on my phone, and whether you believe in the Bible, whether you believe in God or not, it's just a really good scripture. It says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest. And I love the last part of this, if we do not give up. Now, giving up is in the do. It's not in the think or the believe. It's in the do, right? But in order to get to the do, you got to think differently. You got to believe differently. And I guarantee you, when you start doing things, your future will be dictated by that. Things will become to change, become changing in your life, and things will actually take place. We're working on putting together an amazing mastermind retreat. This mastermind retreat is unlike anything else. Now, we've done already one in La Jolla, but this one is even bigger and better. This one is intense. And the whole purpose of a mastermind, the Chefpreneur Mastermind Retreat, is to really build your personal chef business with you and really have you be in a submersive experience where you're seeing and hearing and reading and you're thinking differently from all angles, because you're in a different house. We're doing it in an amazing 25,000 square foot mansion in Orlando, Florida, in the end of February. And you're really going to be there retreating away from your normal life. And you're going to be listening and hearing us talk about things, and the workshops. You're going to be reading and doing things and believing things, because you're going to be surrounded by other like-minded people with me and my team, as well as everybody that's there. And so I just really got inspired about this message, because the mastermind retreat is literally for that reason. And so, I just wanted to just let you know, we still have a few spots available. If you are interested, you can head over to www.chefpreneurprogram.com/retreat21, which is for 2021. So again, that's www.chefpreneurprogram. That's chef, PRENEUR program.com/retreat21. Or if you're watching this on YouTube or any of these other places, you can even look and you might be able to see the link here in the podcast description below. And honestly, like I said before as well, if you haven't been a part, or you don't know that you're a part of our Facebook group, it's a free Facebook group. Again, please search the Chefpreneur Movement Facebook group on Facebook. It's a free group. We'll ask you a few questions, let you in there. And again, there's over 3,000 plus chefs in there for you to ask questions and feel like you have a huge Chefpreneur family, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, type in Chefpreneur, you'll see our channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification button. And again, make sure you put us as favorites on your list, on your favorite podcast listening platform. We love to bring you everything you need and all the value that you need to start and build a personal chef business for yourself. We always say that we're here to motivate, educate, and inspire you guys to take a stand for your personal freedom, breaking the chains of the kitchen job and the traditional culinary industry, and building your own personal chef business. We believe that the future is in your own hands, and we want to help put it in your own hands so that you have control of your future and you don't have to rely upon anybody else. Hey, my name is Chef Andres. I love you to the moon and back. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. We can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Again, what you think is what you believe is what you do, and what you'll do will dictate your future. God bless you guys. Take care. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Chefpreneur Podcast, where we want to educate, motivate, and inspire as many chefs to become their own boss. Please subscribe to the podcast and join us every week to be part of the movement. To sign up for our free online web class, visit thechefpreneurwebinar.com.